Just plain weird. You know who's plain weird? She's plain weird. She's a weird person. Look at her past. Look at what she does. And look at what she used to say about herself, and I won't get into it, what she used to say and who she was compared to what she said starting in about 2016. She became a totally different person, only for political reasons.
Bingo. Bingo, bingo, bingo. That's correct, Mr. Trump. Donald Trump last night with Laura Ingraham reacting to the moniker of weird that the left is trying to put on Trump, on J.D. Vance. It just goes along with the basket of deplorables, etc., fascist, Nazi, whatever you want to call them. Call them weird. Yeah, we are putting together the Make America Weird Again hats. I've got my red hat with the white embroidery, Make America Weird Again, with big Mawa across the top. Because it'll confuse people. It really will. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on the Chris Plant Show. By the way, still no word from the current president of the United States. If he knows he's the president of the United States, that's a good question that I would ask Joe Biden. Who's the president? Who would you say is the president, Mr. Biden? About the situation with the Middle East, where a Hamas political leader was assassinated just a couple hours after Israel took out the Hezbollah senior military leader in Beirut, Lebanon. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, just nailing it with some precision strikes. And, you know, you have to wonder what Iran is going to do. Iran, the world's greatest state sponsor of terror, has said that they have to exact revenge after the words were, I believe, a guest in our house was killed by Israel. So Iran is warning of a response after Israel responded to the killing of 12 children. And we have not heard from our president. We heard a simple, I got nothing, from the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. So basically nothing, as there is a potential for an all-out war in the Middle East. It's really disturbing. And it shows you what we talked about earlier, the kakistocracy, the government by the worst possible individuals. You've got an absent president and a vice president who is practicing to be the president. And you have a lot of people who are very nervous about what would happen if Kamala Harris would be the president. Donald Trump talked about it last night, and he's getting a lot of heat for what I think is a very honest and direct evaluation of Kamala Harris, that the world doesn't respect her. World leaders don't see her. World leaders and world media members understand that Kamala Harris is not a serious person. There is, as I've mentioned in the past, an Australian news anchor who refers to Kamala Harris when she does the weekly segment about Kamala Harris on her network television show in Australia. And it's not a flattering introduction of Kamala Harris.
The cackling nincompoop who is a heartbeat away from the presidency, the comprehensively incapable Kamala Harris.
Comprehensively incapable. Imagine one of the news anchors here referring to a foreign leader that way. That is what's going on. And you had Donald Trump talking about Xi Jinping looking at Kamala Harris, not seriously. And you heard Kamala Harris's explanation of Ukraine and the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. It's a little disturbing. But needless to say, this will be a top story today regarding the situation in the Middle East. And we should be on alert. We are sending a ship to the waters off Lebanon. We have our own military vessels headed there as we speak, which, you know, we have assets to protect in the region. We have people that we need to protect in that area. So at least that's going on. While we haven't had a statement, we have seen movement of military assets. a little disturbing. I mentioned that Donald Trump was on with Laura Ingraham. It was a two-part interview. She did a little bit on Monday and a little bit on Tuesday night. So we got the second half last night. I really appreciated this, especially when Laura Ingraham asked Donald Trump about his legacy. Because if he is reelected president, you have to think, since he's only eligible for one more term, what will he want his legacy to be?
5 years from now, assuming you've been president for 4 years, you've finished your second term, what do you want your legacy to be for America?
That I loved our country and that I was able to straighten it out because our country's going bad. We're a failed nation. We're a failing and a failed nation.
Now, I'm stopping him there because two things stand out. The first thing he said was that we fixed it. That's what I want my legacy to be, that we fixed it, that we got the ship righted. And then he goes on to kind of a campaign address here saying that we're a failed nation. And the left, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, are telling us that the economy is in such great shape. Well, we just had another drop in jobs. Just reported this morning, just a couple hours ago, reported that the jobs numbers are falling for 6 months in a row now. And the kind of jobs being created aren't good jobs. So while inflation still lingers, and while because of the presumed future conflict in the Middle East, the price of oil is starting to get a little shaky, there are a lot of things that aren't looking good for the economy. Whoever becomes president is going to be faced with a really difficult situation. Our current debt has now gone past $35 trillion. Of the taxes we collect, 70+% of those taxes go to servicing our debt. Think about it. If you took your check, if you took your paycheck, and you said, I got to take 70% out of my weekly paycheck in order to pay my credit card debt. Well, what about your mortgage, your rent? And what about your electricity? What about your car payment? What about your credit card payment? 70% of our tax revenues are going to paying the debt service. We're not lowering it, we're increasing it. So Donald Trump is right to mention here that we're a country that's got problems. And this is where he's talking about his legacy with Laura Ingraham.
Laughed at all over the world. When I was president, we weren't laughed at. President Xi was not laughing at me. He wasn't giving us lectures like they did in Alaska in the early weeks of the Biden administration. I've never seen anything. They would never do that. Mexico wouldn't say we want $2 billion just to talk. Mexico gave us everything. Remain in Mexico policy. Nobody could come in. They had to remain in Mexico. Mexico gave us everything. We had a strong border. We had the strongest border in the history of our country. Listen, when I made the right turn, you know why? Because I put up a chart of the lowest immigration in recorded history.
He's right. He's absolutely right. He's dealing in facts. He's dealing in the truth. And Mr. Trump does want his legacy to be that he righted the ship. He got America back on track. There was another great little clip from Donald Trump, and he was addressing the charge from the Democrats. They seem to be kind of dialing this back a little bit. You notice it used to be threat to democracy, threat to democracy, threat to democracy. Donald Trump and the Republicans are a threat to democracy. They want to take away your right to vote. They're going to, Donald Trump will never have another election. He'll be a king. He'll be a dictator. And after they canceled 14 million votes for Joe Biden to be their nominee, suddenly they're thinking, well, wait a minute, we can't point that finger because there are 3 pointing right back at us. And oh, by the way, Arizona primary yesterday, another 400,000 votes were canceled by the Democrats. 400,000 people came out to vote in the Arizona primary. All of those votes were a waste of time because Democrats. Donald Trump talking about the fact that the Democrats keep saying he's a threat to democracy.
I'm the opposite of a threat to democracy. They're a threat to democracy. I mean, look at what they just did. They just took over the presidency from a This was a coup. Biden is a very angry man right now. You know that. They took the presidency away. His wife didn't want it to happen. They took the presidency away like he was a child.
Who's making the decisions right now in the White House, do you think?
A group of people that are fascists, communists, Marxists. They circle the beautiful Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
I love that he did not name names because we all know who did. And Mr. Trump is exactly 1,000% correct here. They took the presidency away from Joe Biden. They didn't just take away the nomination. They took away the presidency. As I mentioned earlier, you pay attention to the mainstream media today. You will start hearing this. The mainstream media is not referring to this administration as the Biden-Harris administration. Many of them are now calling this the Harris-Biden administration. So Joe just got pushed to the back row. And has anyone seen him in the? Do we need the proof of life question again? It may be that we have to do that. But this is where we are today. The media is referring to this as the Harris-Biden administration. And Joe is MIA. And the Middle East is about to catch fire. And nobody appears to be in charge. And it's going to be that way for the next 6 months. It is going just under 6 months. January 20th is when things change. And we all have to make sure they change for the better, for the right reasons. All right, I got to take a couple calls here before we go to break. The phones have just been on fire today, and I appreciate all of you being there. 888-630-9625. Andy in Alexandria is on the phone. Hello, Andy. Andy, welcome to the Chris Plant Show, sir.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm going to go back to your earlier segment, not what you were just talking about with the coup d'etat, bloodless coup d'etat. Why has nobody in mainstream media asked the cogent question of the Secret Service or the FBI investigators why there was a categorical, complete failure of leadership at the protective team in Butler, Pennsylvania? As a retired military veteran, this is something we teach to our soldiers when you are a private E1 in basic training, that you do not abandon your post until properly relieved. And for no one in the supervisory chain of command to have checked that everyone is at their post and that everyone is properly in place before the former president steps on the stage smacks of a gross and willful neglect of duty. And people should be cashiered, other than his personal detail, who actually covered him when the shots started getting fired.
Well,
I've not heard it in the press or anywhere. Have you?
There were questions, Andy, that arose about the local law enforcement that is there, but there is a hierarchy that's established once the Secret Service comes in. Once the feds come in, they take the lead. And, you know, all you need to do is watch the procedural drama shows, the cop shows on TV to see. And that protocol is consistent with what's out in the field. So I'm sure there was a modicum of respect delivered to the Secret Service and the feds over how this thing was going to be handled. Now, you're rightly speculating that if you're a member of that local team, if you see something, you should do something. You shouldn't have to wait, you know, especially if it's somebody with a gun on a rooftop pointed at the former president of the United States. But I want to put the blame at the top as I think it was Reagan. Or was it Reagan or was it Bush who said the fish begins to stink from the head? And so it is the responsibility of the Secret Service. The failure began there. And there's enough blame to go around. But we do need that investigation to go forward. I have so much respect for local law enforcement. It's hard to find fault with guys who, men and women, who may have been just following the orders of the feds, of the people on the national level. But you also don't know what you do in the same situation. It's an interesting question. Until we get the whole story, though, we're not going to be able to fully come up with the answer. But I appreciate you being there, Andy. Thank you. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
But you see, this is a people-powered campaign.
Oh.
Ours is a people-powered campaign.
Oh, is it? Oh, really? That's Kamala Harris at the rally in Atlanta yesterday, letting everybody know that her campaign is a people-powered campaign. I wonder how the 15 million people who cried out in horror and were suddenly silenced when their primary votes disappeared and told they don't mean anything. Not a thing. A lot about Kamala Harris's history floating around the internet today. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. And as I mentioned earlier, we're being told we can't really talk about what she said in the past. We're told we can't do that. That shouldn't matter. Dick Durbin was asked about Kamala Harris and, about her history and all that stuff. Dick Durbin, senator from Illinois, so embarrassed to be a son of Illinois and look at that guy and say, oh, yeah, that's one of the senators of my old home state. This was yesterday.
Trump campaign and its associates have started running ads against Vice President Harris. And the New York Times this morning has noted how she has shifted some of her positions since she was first running for president in 2019 in 2020. I'm just going to read you a paragraph from the Times article. She changed her position on fracking in Pennsylvania. She released that just Friday. And the Times says, in addition to changing her position on fracking, campaign officials say she now backed the Biden administration's budget requests for increased funding for border enforcement, no longer supported a single-payer health insurance program, and now echoed Mr. Biden's call for banning assault weapons, but not a requirement to sell them to the federal government, which she had apparently backed before. How do you think voters feel, Senator, about a candidate who does shift positions?
Well, the issue may be so central to the campaign that it makes a significant difference. But I think the bottom line is the voters judge these candidates in their entirety.
Oh, do they? So those positions do matter. Oh, that's interesting. They're going to be shapeshifters, these Democrats. It's Opelka in for Plant on the Chris Plant Show.
This is the Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for Chris while he is vacationing. I'm here, Jeff Wolf on the board. Jasmine's answering the phones. You listening and participating at 888-630-9625. Got a nomination for the Olympics to get a Woke Olympics Award. It's like everybody's saying you have to give the Olympics themselves the gold medal for the Woke Olympics, for this Olympics being so woke. I know I sounded like Joe Biden there for a minute. I almost talked myself into a corner, almost twisted my tongue up. I sounded like Joe when he said this.
Well, it is what it is because he is who he is. That's why it is what it is.
Yeah, but it's the Woke Olympics for the Olympics. The Olympics are woke. We saw that in the opening. And no, I don't want our athletes to come home. I want them to show off American prowess. And they're starting to do it now as we get closer and closer to track and field and a few more swimming events, etc. I know I mocked the table tennis and I got some feedback, some angry feedback from people who think that the people who win the table tennis deserve the same medal as the person who wins the decathlon. Sorry, not changing my opinion. I think the difficulty of the sport should equal the size of the medal or correlate to that. Therefore, the table tennis Can't call it ping pong. It offends people. The table tennis medals should be, in my world, the size of a dime compared to the decathlon medal or the triathlon. That's a really tough one, especially if to swim through the poop-infested Seine River. Those should be the size of a hubcap. The floor gymnastics, the team for the U.S. should get the hubcap-sized gold medals for their performance. It's just common sense to me. But the Olympics deserves a medal now for being woke because two athletes that previously were banned from international competition in boxing because they couldn't pass the gender testing, they're now going to be allowed to box against women. So biological men are going to be fighting against women. Okay, Olympics. Okay, Paris Olympics. Okay, IOC. You are getting the first gold medal of the woke Olympics of your own Olympic Games. That's the first one. And I would give it to the organizers of the opening ceremonies, but they're going to get a bronze because there were parts of the opening ceremony that were so good. The segment with the acrobats dangling off the rebuilding of the cathedral at Notre Dame was just stunning. And then they had to ruin it with that stupid Last Supper / Feast of the Gods, whatever it was. Insanity. And by the way, there is what appears to be a female, a plus-sized female in a bathing suit in the center of that display. Not the blue guy, not the Bacchus image, but the woman. I think it was a woman, even though nobody can decide what a woman is. She is now threatening to sue anyone who makes fun of her online. Anyone who says that she's a problem is likely to get sued by that lady. Again, I'm speculating on her gender. I know that's probably putting me in the crosshairs too, but she is threatening to sue people for correctly identifying her physical characteristics. I think she's beyond a XXL, but she's a very big person with a very small brain, apparently. And she should get a Woke Olympics award if she does, in fact, sue people. We'll keep an eye on that. That is progressing. People found her Twitter account online. Maybe just mentioning that as I did, I'll be blocked again. If you weren't here earlier, Molly Jong Fast has formally blocked me on Twitter because I played her clip about J.D. Vance and what she calls natalism, which nobody knows what the heck that is. So the first round of Woke Olympics awards we will give to the Olympics themselves for being so darn woke, and they're even going with the green thing. You know, the cardboard beds, which I think are a standard now in the Olympics, that all the Olympic dorms have these cardboard beds. I'm surprised you can't buy them somewhere. It's my problem with those beds would be they're so small. Half of these athletes are really big people. Unless you're a gymnast or a table tennis player, most of them are pretty big people. And I don't know how they're making it on those Olympic beds. All right, I'll stop grousing about the Olympics. I hope our athletes kick some butt today and we bring home some more gold medals and catch and pass China. We currently have more medals than anybody else, but they lead in the gold medals. Yesterday, I want to go back to a couple more clips from the interview with Donald Trump and Laura Ingraham. Second half of the interview with the former president, hopefully future president, had some really interesting takes on the world. We already played Donald Trump and his discussion of what he wants his legacy to be, and that is getting America back on the track, on the right track, fixing the country. But there was a really interesting and fun point at the end. My brother George and I were texting ourselves back and forth about this during last night's Laura Ingraham show on Fox. And Laura Ingraham asked Donald Trump a question I don't think he's ever thought he'd be asked. This was magical.
Kamala Harris in her Twitter bio, which I never noticed until this morning, states her pronouns as she/her. What are your pronouns?
I don't want pronouns. I don't want pronouns. I saw
So
that.
you're fluid? What is that?
Nobody even knows what that means. Ask her to describe exactly what that means.
Well, what is that? Why are people
Nobody
doing that?
knows.
Well, what is that?
Because they're going crazy, all right? We have to bring our country back to sanity.
Yeah. Remember normal, as it says on the merchandise in the Chris Plant store? Remember normal? Yeah, we should. The pronoun thing. I don't respond to people when they ask me what my pronouns are. Well, I do, but I can't say it here on the radio. I'd be thrown off again. But Mr. Trump was absolutely rock solid last night. Very good, his pronouns. And Ingram having fun saying, so you're fluid? Nicely done. Pretty brave to say that to a former president. I guess they know each other very well. The other quote of the day yesterday that I think we give this status to was the quote that is now being repeated many times on liberal sites and on the leftist news media. And that was when Kamala Harris got upset with Donald Trump. She's mad that Donald Trump has not committed fully to a debate with her. Well, currently she's not the candidate. She is the presumptive nominee. There will be a rigged roll call delegate vote next week. And at that point, she may or may not become the nominee. Who knows? This party, as I said, could come up with a third presumptive nominee in 6 weeks. It just might happen. When they start listening to some of the things that Kamala Harris said, there may be some people in the party that go, wait a minute, she came out completely against fracking. And now they're trying to say she's changed on that. She's turned the corner on that. I guess she's evolved, as Democrats like to say. But there's no getting around her support for a mandatory gun buyback.
What would you do about the millions of, specifically, assault weapons that are already in circulation? What do you do about those?
Well, there are approximately 5 million, to your point, Craig. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. It's got to be smart. We got to do it the right way.
Yeah, sure. 5 million. You're going to buy 5 million guns back from people. Or, there's going to be 5 million guns that fell off boats and sank to the bottom of rivers and lakes and oceans. I guarantee you. But Kamala Harris is not above being a dictator when it comes to the Second Amendment. She's also talked about confiscation and the buyback. And if Congress won't do it, she's not above writing an executive order to override the Constitution.
Adding to your gun control agenda? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. But, listen, I don't think we lack for great ideas. As I've said many times, we've been having great ideas for decades. The problem is that Congress has not had the courage to act. And that is why, from the beginning, I have said, my agenda includes attempting to get Congress to act, but if they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action. Because what we need is action.
So she will take executive action in the first 100 days to obliterate a Second Amendment right. That's very interesting to me. She will, I guess she's got a phone and a pen in her head. I guess that's it. Well, if you call her out on this stuff, she gets a little tense. Yesterday in Atlanta, she was very upset that Donald Trump has not formally committed to debate her. He said he probably would. But let us remember, she ain't the nominee. It's not happened yet. So she was playing the crowd yesterday with a little bit of the fake Southern accent, and she was playing the black female card that she picked up when she was elected in 2020. Because in 2016, she was an Indian American, and now, thanks to the declaration of the Associated Press, she's a black American woman. And she played that card in Atlanta yesterday.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
Yeah, say it to my face. Kamala Harris had a pretty healthy crowd, but as we learned earlier, the crowd was there to see Megan Thee Stallion sing a song that if we played it, it would be all bleeps on the radio. And then when she started speechifying, a lot of them left because they had already seen Megan Thee Stallion. The other surprise yesterday came with some of the people who showed up on the Kamala Harris White Dudes for Kamala call. There were some really interesting additions to the Kamala Harris White Dudes for Kamala call. I already played you some of the early arrivals, but then there was the babbler, the guy that showed us that these are just normal people who speak like you and I.
Masculinity as a trope has been co-opted by the MAGA right into something that feeds into and exacerbates the loneliness epidemic as well as the mental health crisis. We aren't the only ones that are hurt by these things.
I have to stop this guy. Anybody who uses trope and exacerbates in the same sentence is just trying to impress you. And they don't talk like you and I. They're smarter than you are, smarter than I am. These are from the White Dudes for Kamala Harris.
That are hurt by these things, Black and brown people, LGBTQIA plus people, especially trans women and indigenous people, and, you know, all sorts of other folks in our society who've been historically and often still today are marginalized and being hurt.
There it is, marginalized and hurt. Every group in there, every victim group in there was on the White Dudes babbling for Kamala. But there also were some celebrities in the political world, including a guy who's running for the Senate in California. Of course, I'm talking about Adam Schiff, 4 Brains.
Great to be with all you dudes, and it is just wonderful to see the incredible excitement. We have the ability to make an incredible woman the president of the United States.
Oh, who is it? Pray tell, who is that incredible woman? Because you can't be talking about Kamala Harris. He sounds about as genuine as a plastic Adam Schiff, which he pretty much is. But he wasn't the only elected official. There was a member of the cabinet on the White Dudes call. Yes, Mayor Pete was there.
Men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care.
Did you know it? Were you aware that men are more free in a country where babies are allowed to be killed? That's what he's saying. Men are more free in a country where abortion rights are put at the tippy top of the priority list. It's so amazing. So Mayor Pete. Has he done anything about the problem in transportation? No, he has a full-time job as the transportation secretary, and he seems to be out campaigning. That seems to be his job. The other one who I was surprised was not on the call was Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, who apologized this week because Meta, that's the Facebook parent company, had been censoring. Gee, what a surprise. Had been censoring some of the posts about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. We got an apology, but, you know, maybe Zuckerberg was not allowed on the White Dudes for Harris call because of what he said publicly after Donald Trump was almost killed.
On a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, how about that? Isn't that amazing? That's why they wouldn't have him on the call. Mark Zuckerberg calling Donald Trump getting up off the floor, off the stage, after being shot in the ear, pumping his fist in the air and saying, fight, fight, fight. Maybe Zuckerberg's having an awakening? Oh, they're going to visit him. He's going to get a visit by the woke police. All right, I'm going to step aside here. We'll do a quick update on everything that's going on in the world and the news. And we'll wrap up today's program. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka wrapping up another day here. I'll be back tomorrow, God willing. And cheer for my nephew who's playing tennis in Washington, D.C. today in the D.C. Open. Hope Riley Opelka gets another win under his belt. Got a tough match happening this afternoon. I may be there cheering. We will cover everything tomorrow. I have a thought. Because a friend of mine said, well, you know, why were Democrats throwing Biden out? They know Kamala's a bad candidate. She's really not going to pull the middle in. And the speculation is the Democrats may be accepting the loss of the White House, but they're trying to save the House and the Senate. They're trying to reclaim the House. There's a narrow margin that the Republicans have. And the Senate was looking like it was going to be a slam dunk for Republicans. But Kamala Harris will bring out a whole bunch of voters that may give new coattails to some of the Democrat candidates in the House and the Senate. Keep an eye on this. There is some input coming tomorrow, and we'll share it with you as well. Let's grab one more quick call before we get out here. Steve in Arlington, Virginia. Steve, welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Question. Have no idea why she thinks she can nominate a vice president or select a vice president when she's really not even a nominee yet. I mean, is this Wee Willie land all over again or what?
Yes, it is. It's pretend. She's pretending to be the president now. She's pretending to be the nominee, so she might as well pretend to have a running mate. And the DNC is complicit in the entire process. If they don't care about 15 million people who voted for Joe, 14 million, what makes you think they care about, decorum, rules, anything that is normal in a political process? They're the threats to democracy, Steve. They don't care what you and I think. They don't care what the voters think. They're coronating someone. Kamala Harris. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant, reminding you, testudo, my friends, testudo.